Hey guys, are you ready to transform your mind so you can transform your life? Coach Mirna brings you one-on-one coaching and expert guests weekly to help you to grow. Because happiness is the progressive realization of a worthy goal.
Looking for personal growth? Let's do it. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling superfood smoothies or offering organic omega-3s, Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform got you covered. Sign up for $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/transform, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/transform to take your business to the next level today.
Welcome back to Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Raina Young. And sitting in the guest chair today is Jonathan Brush. Jonathan and I are going to be talking on the topic, what you really need to know, skills and knowledge for the real world. Welcome, Jonathan.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a delight and an honor to be here, Myrna.
You're very welcome. I'm going to enjoy our conversation from a man of faith. Love it. All right. So let me give you guys a brief introduction. Jonathan Brush is the author of The Personal Triangle, The Skills You Need to Live Life Well, and the president and CEO of Unbound. Appearing on stages and podcasts and leading events around the country, Jonathan teaches young adults and their parents how to ask the right questions, take action, and understand key truths that will enable them to live well. Jonathan's energetic speaking and teaching style engages and inspires, while his honesty, practical advice, and a relentless focus on hope encourages, equips, and enables audiences. Jonathan brings almost 25 years of experience working with young adults and families in a variety of settings, from education to business and from church work to outdoor adventures. He lives in the middle of, and I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right, Shenandoah Valley in Virginia with his wife, Kara, and their 8 children.
Yeah, it's the last part that's the only thing that's worth noting. Everything else is just kind of windowed.
Oh, yeah. How do you say that word? How is that? Shenandoah?
Shenandoah. Yeah, I thought you did fine. So.
I did already. Yes. Yes, my schooling, learning to sound it out, right?
Yeah, hey, it worked. It paid off.
Awesome. All right. So, Jonathan, as we dive right in, the first question I have here is that you work with students and their families on how to think differently using Christian faith. As a woman of faith, I'm curious, how does thriving and our Christian beliefs intersect? Very curious.
Yeah. So first, maybe just set the table a little bit for that. So I came from a background where I was the director of admissions for a private college, and I did some youth pastor work on the side. And worked a lot with young adults. They transitioned from, I say sleeping on the parents' couch to sleeping on their own couch, got doing that transition. And one of the things I noticed is that really in our culture at large, and this includes in the church, we have spent a lot of time telling young people they should change the world and really, rah, go do this. And that's fantastic. I think that in some ways that's a good thing for our culture and time. It wasn't always the case. Sometimes young people were completely ignored or often abused and things like that. So it's, in that sense, it's good. But what I noticed was that when people said that, including in the church, it was often some version of, you need to change the world by being successful. And success is defined by being rich, famous, or powerful. And, I'm not against being rich, famous, or powerful. Those are fine things if they're used correctly. But pursuing those things as an end in themselves is a bit of an empty pursuit. But there's something that's a kind of a dangerous twist in that. And that is that when we tell young people to do that, young people graduate from whatever their end schooling is, and then they get into the so-called real world. And then all of a sudden they find out that it's actually pretty difficult to become rich, famous, or powerful. You have some notoriety, some fame, and you've had some success. And I suspect that you have not found that to come easy, that it's a long journey, right? It doesn't necessarily happen instantly. And so
in my 60s.
That's right. And and you just now feel like I'm just now figuring it out, right? So, yeah.
Right.
And so, in this instant gratification world, young people are like, man, it's 3 years after I graduated and I'm not rich, I'm not famous, and I'm not powerful. And what happens is there's like a pattern that's pretty predictable. That optimism fades to cynicism, and they say, I don't think these people knew what they were talking about. And then that cynicism fades to bitterness, and then they say, oh, they did know what they're talking about, and they deliberately tried to hurt me. And then the bitterness often goes to despair, and we have this kind of situation where young people now die deaths of despair at higher rates than we've had in the history of our country in terms of alcohol abuse, substance abuse, suicide. And so our organization and myself, we should look at that and saying, I think we're pursuing the wrong thing here. What if we stop telling young people to be successful, and not that we don't want them to be successful, but if defined by fame, fortune, and power. And what if we said, it's better if you would learn how to thrive? And that thrive word is used a little bit, but it kind of changes the conversation a bit. And people say, well, what do you mean by thrive? I say, well, to accept full ownership of your life, to focus on relationships, to really understand that to serve others is kind of the point of all this, to live a resilient life where you understand that it's not going to be an Instagram life. Bad things are going to happen, but there's a joy and there's a hope that exceeds those bad things. To really have that kind of an attitude that, to get ahead economically, you have to learn how to create value. Those kinds of things change the conversation. They make everybody pause and go, oh, what am I really trying to do here? And I think that pause absolutely ends up being more essential. It's not that I feel like I've got the perfect formula for this is how people live great lives. It's more like, if you think about more, what would I do to prepare myself to thrive versus what would I do to make myself successful? I tend to think it puts you in a much healthier, tend to think is maybe unduly weak. I'm convinced that it puts you on a much healthier path because I've got a chance to witness this so many times. I've just seen thousands of young people walk this path, and the ones who focus on thriving end up doing better, including often are more successful than the ones who pursue success and find that to be a bit of an empty pursuit.
Well, I agree with all that you just said, but what I wanted to understand is you were teaching them based on the faith and what's in the Bible,
right?
And I just wanted to know if there is like a scripture or there's or something in the Bible that you're basing that on, or you're just basing it on research and data.
Right. Well, and I appreciate I don't get people that actually sort of try to pin that down so directly. And I appreciate that because each of those things that I stated do stem from a biblical root. And actually that might be an interesting sort of thing to describe here. I tell people that Unbound is taught from a position of a Christian worldview. And what I mean by that is that I think that the things that we teach, we strive to make sure that it corresponds to and it is rooted on biblical understanding and foundation. Now, I'm also pretty careful to say I'm not your church. So in other words, when it comes to theological specifics, I expect you to be a part of a local church and to yield to your local pastor for that. But when I see things like, I think you should prioritize relationships. I think a biblical mandate would say that time and tasks only make sense in the context of relationships. To quote C.S. Lewis, you've never met a mere mortal. And so, your job's not going to last, your house isn't going to last, your business isn't going to last. But we believe as Christians that the person that I'm talking to, you and I, that I'm talking to you, Myrna, that you have an immortal soul. And that's in C.S. Lewis's words, as an everlasting splendor or an immortal horror. And so it doesn't matter how much I agree or disagree with you. It doesn't matter if we're on different sides of an issue or politically or anything like that. We teach our students every single person you meet is made in the image of God, no exceptions. And so you don't have any excuse to do anything but treat them as full immortals, whether you agree with them or not. And so that's kind of a basis. Okay, well, if that's healthy relationships, then when we say to serve others, well, all of a sudden it puts that in context, right? We're serving somebody who's immortal. Yeah, all of a sudden other things pale. Being rich, famous, or powerful doesn't look nearly as important as taking care of your neighbor, because one of those things will last forever and one won't. When we say to create value, I say, well, biblically speaking, we follow an infinite God who's infinitely creative. Look around the world that he made. And then we say, okay, well, if we're made in God's image, you carry the Imago Dei, that's why you have, eternal value. If you're made in God's image, part of that image is that you also are a creator. So then we have this abundance mindset where we say that, it's not that there's a limit that like I take something and when I do that, Myrna, you get less, or Myrna, your success is going to come at the cost of mine. We say that no, because we follow an immortal God who has infinite creativity, infinite creativity means infinite ability to do better things and create more value. So creating value is us reflecting the image of God and saying, hey, if we work hard enough, we can work in relationship with other people so that we always find win-win possibilities here. So those things, and then when we say live resiliently, that comes from this really biblical idea that we live in a broken, busted, fallen world. And so none of us get out without scars. We all have failures and tragedies and crises and sicknesses and despair that afflicts us. And so if we pretend like we can avoid that by just living a perfect life, that's not going to pan out. But if we say, no, don't be surprised when those things come, but you deal with those things in light of a truth that is bigger and a joy and a hope that exceeds those things. So I really appreciate that question, because all of those things to thrive are rooted in these ideas, these biblical based ideas that I think reflect the reality of the world as it actually is.
That's amazing. And that's a lot to unpack. But yeah, so that's great. I'm glad I asked the question. And it was a little different from what I was thinking, because, I'm thinking that, we're all created with a purpose, and we all have a destiny. And I was wanting to understand what principles we were working on when we say that, being successful is not as important as thriving. But now I understand how you've unpacked it. You were talking about not the right. You're saying that don't go after the money and the fame. Go after, treating people equally, making your relationships important, coming from an abundant world where the Bible says that, look at the lilies of the valley, they know but the splendor, that, that kind of thing, where you're coming from. So yes, I wanted to understand it for myself and for the audience. So yeah, you touched on the abundance mindset there a minute ago. And that's one of the questions that I have here, that yes, a lot of times, we think that the world is scarce, that if you are successful, then you're taking from someone else. So when we have an abundant mindset, we know that there is enough for everyone. So you want to expand on that?
Yeah. So, and I think this comes from this idea, as I said earlier, that, if you're made in the image of God and God is infinitely creative, then it's not that you're infinite, but it means that there's an endless supply of creativity. And so I think what that means is, and sometimes people get confused, and maybe a clarification after what you just said. I'm careful to tell people, I don't think there's anything wrong with being rich, famous, or powerful. I'm not an anti-rich person or an anti-powerful person or an anti-famous person. My experience has shown me that people who pursue those things first and as an end in of themselves, there's all kinds of examples of people who end up being quite miserable. On the other hand, sometimes, and this also I think takes some pressure off people, if you pursue thriving, and I think of these biblical principles, then you're kind of saying to some extent, becoming rich, famous, and powerful is more God's deal than mine, meaning that he will open doors and create opportunities, and some of those might lead to those things. But then when you get there, you can use them in a way that is healthy. And some of that comes with that abundance mindset, which is you approach this world and say, yeah, there's problems, and there's an inequality, and there's hatred, and there's things that are going to work against me, and there's injustice and all those things. And we're not to turn a blind eye to any of that. In fact, we're to confront those and to work to change those things. But the great hope comes to say, and that ultimately we believe that we're on the winning team. and that doesn't mean we're going to see the full victory right now, but it means that we are put in this time and a place, harking back to you said, with a purpose. I don't think you're here accidentally. I think that God placed you in this time and this place with these challenges and these problems for a reason, and that you have a role to play in that.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Do you have a tendency to compare yourself to others? Does social media play a part in that? What do you do when you get caught up wishing your life looked like someone else's? Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. It might look like they have it all together on their Instagram, but in reality, they probably don't. One of the benefits of therapy is that a therapist can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life.
Therapy is helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/TYM today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/TYM. This episode is sponsored by GoFundMe. A few years back, my goddaughter needed surgery in Guyana and lacked the funds for the surgery. My family started a GoFundMe fundraiser to help her get the surgery. She received the surgery and it saved her life. Research shows that people love to help others in need. So if you ever need to raise funds for surgery, funeral expenses, travel expenses, send in your kid to the Olympics, or even fund your book or movie project, GoFundMe is the most trusted place to raise funds, and it's a lot easier than you think. It only takes a few minutes to set up your fundraiser. With a community of over 150 million people, GoFundMe is the leader in fundraising. They help people help people. You can withdraw your funds at any time, even if you don't reach your goal. So, the next time you need help, head over to gofundme.com/transform and get started by tapping the green button. Asking for help is the smart thing to do. It's free to start, free to manage, and designed to help you reach your goals. Start your fundraiser today through my special URL, gofundme.com/transform. Also, as a Transform Your Mind listener, you will get a free coaching session with a GoFundMe expert. So whether you're starting a fundraiser for today or you want to set one up for the future, go right now to gofundme.com/transform.
Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Usually, improvements don't come overnight, but once in a while, one small fix can catapult you to the next level. If your commerce platform is holding your business back, you owe it to yourself to see what Shopify can do for you. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling satin sheets from Shopify's in-person POS system or offering organic olive oil on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you're covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. Sign up for $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/transform, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/transform to take your business to the next level today.
But he also puts you on the winning team so that you can play your part and do as best that you can and trust that God will multiply that and bless that and expand that beyond what you see and beyond even the time that you live in, that ultimately will work together for his good. And so that then comes into a whole bunch of things, So a scarcity mindset says, I need to hoard to what I have and not give. And Myrna, I think you just had a recent podcast with somebody who was talking about generosity, right? And so, that she was saying there, even the science says that, no, if you turn around and let go, and I think you used the example there that, you can't get anything new if you've got a closed hand, right? There's this an abundance here that's like, as you lean into, there's always a way, if you keep working at it, where there's more value to be created. There's not a place where you have to hoard what you have because that's all there is. And I think just that can be a huge release of stress, and it can be a huge injection of hope to say, okay, there's always going to be a way that we can get someplace. We can get someplace where everybody wins on this. Even if it's not fully understandable by me now, I can trust that God will take that and bless that, even maybe generations down the road. And so there's both a kind of an immediacy in my life right now, but also a trust that I'm playing part of a bigger picture here. I think both those things can be exciting, especially for young people who are trying to figure everything out and feeling like everything has to happen yesterday.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, I love that. Yeah, you're not just short-sighted. You know that it's a marathon and not a sprint.
Yes.
And yes.
And it might be a relay. It might be that you hand the baton to the next generation.
You gotta pass the baton. That's true. Right. Exactly. So that's a great mindset to get young people in, because the young people they normally want to see responses immediately, right? They don't want delayed gratification. They want instant gratification. So it's a good mindset to be teaching the young people, right? So one of the questions I have here that I see from your work is that you talk about something that's called skill-based learning versus project-based education. Right. So is that still, regardless of what we were talking about just now about, delayed gratification and having the abundance mindset and thriving, or that's something different?
No, I think they're related. And I would say it's skill-based learning and project-based education, or with that those kind of go together, not necessarily in opposition. And I would say that skill-based learning and project-based education is often a great way to understand the abundance mindset, because it requires you to look for those kinds of solutions. And again, just to set the table a little bit here, first of all, I always put a caveat in. When I talk about this, I think there's some generalizations here that will benefit a large amount of your audience. There are exceptions, and I'm not making a blanket. I don't think that I've come up with some sort of universal truth that applies to everybody out there, right? That's not my job, and it's way above my pay grade, right? And so, for example, some of the things I'll say, you'll say, well, that doesn't apply to me, and it may not. But for a large part of you, this might be a really good perspective shift. So one of the things that's interesting, and I make this a bit of a radical claim, and I'll hang with me for a second so I think I can justify it. When I tell people, hey, education is fundamentally different than it ever has been before. And I get nervous when people say stuff like that, but let me explain it to you. You said your age earlier, so I'll reciprocate. I'm 47, right? And so when I applied to go to college, I used a typewriter. And when I graduated, I planned my honeymoon on the internet. So I was like right at that tipping point, right? But before I went to college, if I wanted to learn something, and my parents didn't know it, and I didn't have a book I could learn from in my house, I had to drive to the library, which for me was 25 minutes away. I had to go to the card catalog. I had to check out the book. I had to learn it, and I had to memorize it or write it down. And so that meant that for everybody out there, if you're a business or if you're trying to make a living, that the more letters behind your name meant the more stuff in your head, which means the faster you could apply it to the problems in front of you. And that was an advantage, right? So knowledge, meaning answers in somebody's brain, was really important. That's why in the 80s, Trivial Pursuit was such a popular game, and it's not now because it wouldn't be fun, right? Because you just Google it, right? And so are you going to ask Siri to answer all the questions? And so now, of course, we have these little computers that we carry around in our pockets, and we have access to all the world's information almost instantly. And so that's fundamentally changed things, where it's more important to be able to ask good questions than to know all the answers. It also means that the things that a lot of people do for a living are disrupted almost on a constant basis by technology. And so if you take 4 years and you go someplace else to learn about those, by the time you come back to the things that you're learning about, they've shifted radically.
Yeah.
So now there's some things that require that kind of academic training, law school, medical stuff, engineering. So, I mean, there's some definite exceptions. But for especially in the business world and those kinds of places, we teach students that say, hey, if you want to learn these things, the way to learn it is to get someplace where you're actually doing it. So you could go and read about it for 4 years and come back and find out it's all outdated, or you can actually get in and do it. So I find this a lot in digital marketing. I don't have time for anybody who spent 4 years learning about digital marketing, because whatever you learned is now outdated. However, if you want to learn about digital marketing, help me run an Instagram campaign tomorrow. And then, do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again. And so now you're getting skills, and you're doing projects that actually matter, that are real. They're not theoretical. They're not academic. Not that those things don't have a place, But even if you're academically learning, I want students to do hands-on stuff that has results in the real world. And again, to that abundance piece, when they do that, you find that you have to, in a test, there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. In the real world, there's a whole spectrum there. And one of those answers is one that benefits everybody. And that's the one that if you can get to that one, most often you can get better results for everybody. But you learn that by actually doing it. And so, our program is really focused on helping students do real stuff versus, things that maybe are kind of theoretical, but you'll do it later when you enter the real world. I think you're in the real world now.
Okay, so I got that. That's actually pretty good. AI is now the big thing. When I was interviewing a gentleman last week that we're talking about AI, he's talking about these tools that you can use. So then I asked him, I says, you want to give me an example of some tools? And he says, no, I am giving you the mindset that you need to use AI, but I'm not going to give you any tools because by the time this interview airs,
right,
the tools would have changed because it's constantly changing. Because, he says you think that something changes in a year. No, he says AI changes every month, right?
Yes.
So I understand what you're saying that, when you go to school and you get a 4-year education, and by the time you come out, then everything has changed. People don't actually understand that until it's put in front of them as their awareness, right? Because a lot of times we go around in things and we don't actually... we're in them. We're not aware of them, right? Until someone brings it to attention. Because yes, that is a very important analogy of what's going on now. But people are still spending a lot of money to go to college and come out with $150,000 worth of student loans.
Yes. Yeah. And
for skills that they don't even use. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I always want to say, like, it's really important you understand what it's for, right? If college is a great place to acquire a lot of knowledge. And I think that that's fantastic. I'm excited about learning and acquiring knowledge. But the question is it worth $150,000 for that knowledge, right? And because what people think they're going to, because that's not what people think they're going to college for. They think they go to college to get a job card. And before that, they don't think that because they're silly or they're wrong or they're stupid. They think that's because that's what was true almost from the time college started. And especially since the GI Bill in our country, right? College became the default vocational training ground. And what I want people to know is that things have fundamentally shifted. There are some jobs that do require that. Engineering is a great example, right? But there's the fast growing majority of jobs. Actually, getting a degree is going to hamper your ability to do well in those jobs. And so if you're going to college because you want to enrich yourself and learn a lot, that's fantastic. Just understand what you're doing and make sure it matches up with your financial ability. But if you're going to college because you think if I go to college, then I'll magically be able to get a job on the other side, you're likely to be just desperately disappointed unless you're in a couple specific fields and indebted and taught in a system, an answers-based paradigm that doesn't translate to the real world. So you not only will come out not prepared, you will in some ways come out trained for a world that doesn't exist anymore. And that's the thing that I really would like parents and students to sort of pause and consider. And then, college may still be a great match for some people, but it'll be a better match if you know why you're going. If you don't know why, when I went to school, Myrna, if you didn't know why you're going, it might cost you $7,000 in loans that you could pay back. And you probably had learned something that would help pay back. That's a very different calculus when you're $150,000 in debt and you're still uncertain. That's a worse deal. I'm not great at math, but that's not a great deal.
Do you believe in magic? Twilight Wing is a professional spiritual healer who want to help you access the spiritual realm to create change in your life. Do you require healing? Are you bothered by entities in the fourth dimension and would like to banish all unwelcome spirits? What about money? Twilight Wing can help you clear your money blockage. Visit Twilight Wings Magic on Etsy. Get one-on-one service and trusted 5-star spells. that have worked since ancient times to discover wealth, rebuild your relationships, and help you find success. Visit Twilight Wings on Etsy by searching for Twilight Wings Magics and regain control of your spiritual well-being. That website again is TWILIGHTWINGS
I know. I picked that number because it's a real number.
Yeah.
My daughter is $150,000 in debt. She went to do her master's in political science, and that is a toll. Now she is working in political science, and she's into politics and all that. And I don't know what that degree has helped her with, but it allowed her to get a job doing that. But a lot of college people are not working in the field, because even before all this stuff is happening where it's obsolete, you come out of college a lot of times and you can't get a job in your field. So you have to do something totally different. And you're right. So I'm glad that we're exposing the fact that, yeah, I like what you said. Skill, project based, where yes, digital is where it's at. So if you're working in it and you're getting the skills and you're understanding it, it's much better than, going to school and learning something, and by the time you come out, everything has changed. So that's amazing. So I like what your work does, is that you're teaching, like you said, you're teaching the young people the skills and knowledge for the real world, and not this cultural made up world that we've been working with for a while. Now, you also talk about some of the most important things that you want to tell young adults and the parents of young adults. So what does that fall into?
Yeah, so one of them would be some of the things we talked about, that I think that you should pursue thriving instead of success. I think that you should understand kind of where we are in this kind of place and time that learning has fundamentally changed, that you having an abundance mindset it's going to be an optimistic idea. And that, when I say things have fundamentally changed, that we do live in a questions-based paradigm, sort of an answers-based paradigm. So asking good questions ends up being more important than knowing all the answers. But here's the thing that I kind of boil that all down to, is I say, because here's the risk. Parents are like, oh, man, I just spent 18 years trying to teach this kid, get good grades and all this kind of stuff. And then this dingbat shows up on this show and tells me all this stuff is wrong. And I'm doing something different. I got to learn all these new things. And I'm already stressed out about this. And students are like, man, I'm so stressed out. Before it was like, depending on where you were born and where you lived, it kind of, you only had like 4 or 5 or less options of what you did with your life. And, that's not necessarily good, but it was simple. Now, we tell everybody you have an almost infinite amount of things you can do with your life. And we shouldn't be surprised if that's scary to some people, right? They kind of say like, I don't know how to sort infinity. I mean, like, where do I start, right? And so I think the thing that I'd like to tell parents and students the most is sort of take a deep breath and relax and understand it is not necessary, nor is it reasonable, and has never have in all of history has it been reasonable for you to know all the answers at 18. That all you need to know is to do the next step. And that almost always involves just asking a good question. And if you're willing to take a deep breath and to relax and to do what's in front of you as well as you can do it, and then have the drive and ambition to look ahead and keep getting a little better, that you'll be in good shape. And the formula we teach for this in Unbound is we call it an attitude of mastery. And we say, whatever you're doing, do it as well as you possibly can, and try to get better at it than everybody else around you, not as a competition, but as a way to kind of pull yourself forward. And then spend some time reflecting on what it is that you choose to master, and always look to do 2 things. Build skill in whatever it is that you like to master, and gain experience. So young people, you don't have to know your major. You don't have to know your career for the next 40 years. You don't have to know where you're going to live. You don't have to know all those things. I'd like to tell you, from a vocational job thing, choose things that allow you to build skill and gain experience. And eventually you will trade that skill for autonomy. You will trade that experience for work that makes a difference. It's going to take a while. And that people that have autonomy in their work, can choose how they do their work and feel like their work makes a difference and their work pays the bills, those people love their jobs. And it doesn't matter what they're doing. And so it's not about getting that perfect, glamorous, I'm going to work for Red Bull, I'm going to get a political campaign job. There's nothing wrong with those. It's just that there's lots of people who love their jobs in all kinds of vocations. And the formula is almost always They get to choose how they do their job. They feel like it makes a difference. Well, how do you get there? You trade skill for autonomy. You trade experience for work that makes a difference. And you get there by having an attitude of mastery and just keep doing what's in front of you the best of your ability and look for more of that in the next thing. And that's it. And so if you do that, first of all, it puts you on a path to be successful, not to be, not to pursue success, but to begin to thrive, right? But it also takes a lot of pressure off it. You can go, I don't have to know everything. And then finally, if you're one of the people that say, I know I want to be X, go for it. What a blessing God's given you, that he's given you that clarity. Just realize that most people aren't there. And so if you are, forget all this and go for it, man. But if you're not, join the crowd. Most of us are there. Mert, I don't know when it was you decided to host podcasts and be on radio, TV. But for me, I was 40 before I was kind of like, I think I got an idea what I can actually do. It took me a while to get there. So,
well, it's really funny you should say that. But God directed me to be a life coach. The podcasting was just a bonus.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of a sudden, he said that one day it just came to me. It says, yes, this is what you're supposed to do.
But when? So my question would be though, Myrna, when was that? Was that when you were 18?
Oh no! I was in my 40s. Yes, I was in my 40s, and all my life I've been like a salesperson, and yeah, I came out of college. That's funny. Yeah, this is gonna throw you. When I was in college, there was a gentleman that came in. They always have successful people that have come through the course. And this gentleman came in and talked about how he was making $80,000 selling some, I think it was computers. I'm not sure what he was selling. And I thought, that's a lot of money.
That's what I pay attention to.
That was a lot of money. I was like 17 years old, coming from Guyana, a poor country. And I'm thinking $80,000 is a lot of money. So I wasn't even finished college yet. I went and I got a sales job. And I continued being a salesperson. I was actually a very successful salesperson. I ended up making $100,000. And then I came to America. I mean, this was in Canada. Mm-hmm. Then I came to America and I was doing a business, and selling again. And then one day, God just dumped it at me. Yeah, you need to be a life coach. That's your purpose. And I became a life coach, and someone offered me a radio show, and the podcast came after it. But as you say, I started off life coach really young. It's life coaching is the direction that God pointed me in, and it's been very, very fulfilling in what I'm doing, and I'm also spreading God's word. I mean, I picked the name of my show to be Transform Your Mind. It's the Bible says renew your mind, right? So I picked one of those topics, and that's basically what I've been doing. That's my ministry. But I had a question on what you just said, is because young people a lot of times don't know what they're good at.
Right.
And they depend on the guidance counselor to point them in the right direction, kind of thing. So how are you teaching them to become skilled at something? Are you teaching them to go by their passion? Are you teaching them to go what they're already talented, like God said, what you have in your hand? How they take it?
Right. Well, and this is like a little bit of reflection on your story, because I think your story is interesting. And what I was fascinated by is that, your story is certainly unique to you, and I've never heard one like that. But I've heard lots of stories about people that say, well, I did this, and then I was like, whoa, this is what I'm supposed to do, right? And so I think as a young person, I heard that, and I was like, well, bully for you. I mean, that's great. I mean, and then look at you. You're rich, famous, and powerful, but I'm sitting here at 18 going, I don't know what to do, right? And so, but it's interesting if you got to go through and deconstruct that a little bit. You had an opportunity, whatever the incentive was, to become a salesperson. And then you did that, and you leaned into it. You had an attitude of mastery, and you got really good at it. And along the way, you build all this skill dealing with people. You don't get to be good at sales unless you understand what people need and communication and all those kinds of things, which coincidentally just happens to be what make you a really good life coach. And then you got experience because you're solving problems for people in sales, and you're finding out what they need, right? And then so all of a sudden you have experience and you have skill, and then God says be a life coach, and you say, well, I have the experience to know how to do that. I have the skill to be able to do that. I know it makes a difference. And I'm in a position now where I can do that professionally and pay my bills, right? And so that's the part that I want people to know. It's like, yeah, you could have not Myrna's story and not my story. You could have your story, which is going to look completely unique because God made you completely unique and put you in a time and place, and what blessings he has for you, we don't know. But there is some pieces you can deconstruct and say, Myrna didn't know that she was going to be a life coach down the road, but she did know that it was inherent and important for her to become as good as possible at being a salesperson, right? And that then that ends up translating and leading forward. So then to answer your question, Myrna, is that I'm less interested. Okay, well, first of all, just a quick sidelight. There's a saying that says, you do something you're passionate about and you'll never work a day in your life. And look, if people say that are well-meaning, and so I love you, well-meaning people, but I just want to just scream when I hear that. And I tell my students, you should smile and nod because it was well-intentioned, and you should understand it's a big pile of stinking garbage, right? And it's often said by people who hate their job and go, if I just skateboarded more, I'd be working a Red Bull contract now, right? And so there's an aspect there that's well-intended but poor advice. It's not about passion. It certainly is about hard work, but it does have these clear, consistent elements. The other unpopular stance I have is I really am not a big fan of personality tests and Enneagram things and things like that. It's not that I don't think that they say something interesting. It's that they're too specific, and I find my students start to think that they're self-fulfilling prophecies. The Enneagram said that I should be annoying, so I am. Myers-Briggs said I should be outgoing, so I won't shut up. That kind of thing. And so, but I do think that it is true that God gives people a certain thing. So we teach something in the book I wrote called The Personal Triangle, where we tell students, look, most people tend to have a proclivity towards being a connect person. They can really walk into a room and relate to people. It doesn't mean they're extroverted in life of the party. They're just really good at communicating with people, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes larger. Some people are really good at being able to create. They come up with new ideas all the time. And some people are really good at coordinating, which means that they're just really good at organizing things. And most folks are really good at one of those, good at the second one, and not good at the third. I don't feel like that's built into your DNA, meaning you can't change it. I think that God gives you the ability to adjust, but I think most of us drift towards one of those things. And so I teach my students all the time to say, look, I want you to get into a real world situation, a project, a skill-based thing. I want you to pick something that you can do better than everybody else, which means that you're willing to try at it. And then I want you to reflect, and I want you to think, did I pick something that required a connect skill, a coordinate skill, or a create skill? And then I want you to do it again, and I want you to do it again. And then I want you to see the pattern there. And now you've learned something about yourself. Now, if you feel like you ought to be a create person and you're a coordinate person, well, become that. I mean, I think God gives you that ability. But on the other hand, if you find that you're always picking connect jobs, well, probably if you go to work for Chick-fil-A, you ought to work at the cash register, not in the back. That's probably where your best skill set is, right? And then if you do that, you'll gain a whole new set of skills and you'll be able to go up to the next level. And then if you're in marketing and you're a connect person, you're going to be the person that's the salesperson that you're out there talking. But you can also work in marketing as a coordinating person and do all the digital media statistics and analysis stuff in the background. In other words, this doesn't dictate what field you go into. It dictates the skills that you'll use in the field that you end up moving into. And I think that gives students enough direction to start to go, oh, I have a direction and a purpose, and I can kind of get my hands around this without locking them in and saying, these 5 jobs are the ones that you should look for. These are the careers that are viable. This is back to that abundance mindset. I think there's thousands, millions of jobs and careers, and they change all the time. It's not about picking the right job. It's about applying your gifts and your skills in a way that creates value for other people in the most effective way possible.
That is good. I've never heard it put quite that way before, but it's good. Yes. And that's why I asked the question, if you were telling them to look at what they already have, what's in their hand and what they're passionate about. And I like what you said, but if you're passionate, you never have. But it's true. People say that. If you're passionate about something, and I think I've already said that, if you're passionate about something, then you could work all day and you're not even going to notice the time and all that. You said it's a bunch of garbage, but I like that.
Well, it's not you are. It's not that it's a bunch of
them to thrive. Yeah, it's not just to. Yeah, good.
Sorry, I didn't mean. It's you're correct. It's both things are true. It's the problem is that people think that they don't know what to be passionate about. So I I'd actually want to double down on what you're saying. You're right about if you do something you're passionate about, you love it. The problem is, as a young person, here's what happened when I was a director of admissions. I'd say, what do you want to major in? Well, they wanted to be a doctor. They wanted to be a lawyer. That means they were smart and they wanted to make a lot of money. They wanted to sing and rock it on stage. That means they were good at music. Or they wanted to race bikes for Red Bull. That means that they were good at bike riding or skateboarding, something like that. And then after that, what do you want to be passionate about? Well, I want to renovate houses. Why? Because that was what was on TV right then. I want to be a whatever the criminal investigator is, because that was on TV at the time, right? I mean, it was. And so what was interesting to me, I was like, okay, people don't know what to be, or my favorite, everybody wants to be a marine biologist. And I'd have kids that want to be marine biologists, but they hate science and they hate math. And I'd say, why do you want to be a marine biologist? Well, because I want to get paid to swim with dolphins.
Where did they get that go from?
Well, because they want to swim with dolphins, right? And it's like, well, yeah, if I got paid to swim with dolphins, I may not be on this interview. And so the point is that young people think that what they're passionate about is what they like to do. But they like to do things like, why do they like riding bikes? Because that's what they got good at, because they've been riding since they were 6, right?
Right.
And so what I want to say is like, that is actually a true statement. Do something you're passionate about. Maybe I should be more accurate, and this is a good correction, is to say, but don't think that you know what you're passionate about. Mm-hmm. And that you will tend to be passionate about something that you're good at doing. And that's likely to take some work that is not a lot of fun. I don't know, Myrna, maybe you loved every bit of sales stuff. I've done sales stuff too. And cold calling was not fun, right?
No.
And so,
no.
But I learned a ton.
I like what I do here now, talking to people and connecting. But I hate those sales, those calls. I never did them.
But yeah, and I tried to avoid them too. But at some level, we learned skill, at least in training, that allowed us to do some of these things from that, right? And so that's what I want students to say. Like, you have to put in some time and you have to build that skill and build that experience. And you'll build it faster if you do something that's in your connect, coordinate, create type of vein. And as you do that and you get good at something, you will become passionate about it. But you'll likely find yourself, obviously it didn't exist when we both went to work podcasting. But if somebody would have said to me even 10 years ago, you'll be passionate about podcasting, I'd be like, what? And I've got some skill at it because I have some experience at it, right? And so, yes, in that sense, it's what precedes the passion that's maybe more important. It's not, I'm passionate about this. People, I say this, like, people walk around and go, I don't know what I'm passionate about. Maybe God will strike me with passion lightning. And I'll be like, I'd like to fly airplanes. That's what I'm passionate about, where people are always passionate about.
I actually heard that God puts it in you. Actually, I've written something on the burning bush, whatever is in you, something will ignite it. And,
But sometimes you have to work to uncover that. I mean, it took Moses 80 years of chasing sheep in the desert before he realized that he actually needed to talk to Pharaoh, right? I mean,
that's right, exactly.
He didn't leave Egypt passionate about leading people out of from Pharaoh. He left Egypt passionate about getting his butt out of Dodge before he got arrested, right?
Exactly. But so that's pretty good. But I like where we're going. We're going and we're giving people, you're right. This is about asking the right questions, understanding that that the career that you pick, because a lot of times they pick these careers because they are chasing success and they are chasing money and they are chasing wealth, and they become very unhappy. So I love your work and I love your, I'm going to call it ministry, that you're teaching them how to thrive in their relationships, in having an abundance mindset, and having all those things, because they are going to be happier. And then an amazing thing happens. When you are happy and when you're doing the right things, the wealth comes. It's like a byproduct, right? So that is, and what you said about the way that you choose, the 3 things that you talked about, whether you're a connector, right? You have the personality, right? Because you can't make up you're born with a personality. You can't change. So if you're an introvert and you want to be an accountant and you don't like people, I guess that means you're not a connector. But you may be a coordinator. My daughter, with the $150,000, student loan bill, she's an introvert, and she's a coordinator at the job that she's doing. So I've never heard it, presented in such a way, but it's a perfect way, because who you are cannot be changed, right? You can learn skills, but who you are cannot be changed. If you're an introvert or you're an extrovert or you like coordinating and you're, whatever, it popped into my head that people could really understand that. One of the most popular people, and I know you know her, Kim Kardashian, she started by being coordinating people's houses and looking after their closets. That's what took her into now being a billionaire. That's where was her start, because that's what she was good at. So people can actually understand that. I don't know how it turned into her being a reality star, but that was her first job, coordinating. So yes, you're and that's something I do not like. So
well, I'm with you. I tend to be the connect first and then create and then coordinate the distance second, which means and that at some level we have to do all those things, right? But then at a certain level, it makes sense to move it off. So in business, when I started, I had to make sure I kept the finances up for my department and all those kinds of things. But now as a CEO, it would be absolutely foolish for me to be in charge of all the finances for our company. That's the least skilled thing, the thing I'm least skilled at. But it also means that I have to be really careful to put really good people in those places because I understand the least about that. But that's also true in our own personal lives, right? I'm fine at doing lots of things in my life, but I really am interested in paying a CPA to do my taxes because I'm not good at that part of it, right?
Exactly.
So
right. Yes. So that's good. Awesome. We're having a great conversation. So I want to touch back on, because you said it a little bit fast in the beginning. I want people to really understand what's the difference between thriving and success. Can you break that down a little bit again?
Yeah, and I think and that's a great question, because some people react and be like, "Plus, you run an educational thing and you don't want my kid to be successful." And so, that's why would I enroll them there? And so, and the answer to that is, I absolutely desperately want your student to be successful, but I want them to be successful in the right mindset. And so let me explain that by talking about something we didn't talk about earlier, but I think illustrates this. We have this idea that we tell young people that you will only change the world if you are rich, famous, or powerful. And I really have a problem with that contention. And I tell students, no, you change the world by being extraordinary at the ordinary things in front of you. And then, hear me out, there's a trail that starts there. And that once you become extraordinary at the ordinary things in front of you, and you consistently do that, you will frequently find that extraordinary things become ordinary. And so, but to me, that's a much healthier path to success. That if I graduate from whatever my final schooling is, and I say, in order to change the world, I have to start a ministry that digs 300,000 wells in whatever underdeveloped place that you want to be. If I want to change the world, I need to be the governor of my state. If I want to change the world, I need to be the CEO of a startup company that's the next unicorn. Those people can change the world. It's just a precious few of them. And biblically, to go back to what you said earlier, you said, how do you tie it to the Bible? Well, there's all kinds of people in the Bible, but the 12 that made the biggest difference didn't have any of those things, right? They were not famous, they were not rich, and they were not powerful. They did not die rich, famous, or powerful, although I guess they're really famous now. And we might say they're really powerful now too, right? But the point is that that's not the way they did it. And even Jesus didn't do that by becoming the emperor. He didn't do that becoming the richest person, right? But he was extraordinary at the ordinary things he did with the interactions he had with each person, right? And so I think that gives and I tell students all the time, look, I can teach you how to change the world, but be careful before you hear this, because once you hear it, you're on the hook. Like, you have to change the world. Okay, well, what is it? Well, be extraordinary at the ordinary things you're doing. That means be extraordinary washing dishes tomorrow. It means extraordinary about doing your homework. Extraordinary about being nice to your neighbor. Extraordinary about taking care of the cat. I mean, all those kinds of things. Well, that's silly. No. That's the only stuff that actually does change the world, because that's right down where we all live. Only certain people live with the Kardashians. The rest of us live in the real world, right? And so when you're extraordinary at those ordinary things, then you're focusing on things that help you to thrive. And then you will find that often, as you do that again and again and again, it compounds and God blesses. And all of a sudden, some of you are going to wind up, almost all of you are going to end up more rich, famous, and powerful than you were at the beginning. But some of you will get extraordinary success. But now you're not confused, and you don't think that you're important because you're famous. You understand that you're famous because you did ordinary things extraordinarily well. You're not rich and think that you're rich because God just thought you were more special than everybody else. You're rich because you compounded and you worked and you kept doing the stuff in front of you as extraordinarily well as you can, and all of a sudden it multiplied, and here you are. So that's the difference. It's not that I don't want people to be successful. It's that I don't want people to pursue something that will wind up empty when they get there. When you have gotten to be successful, famous, rich, powerful, whatever, by doing it this way, then when you have those extra resources, you keep doing what you're doing.
Right.
If you just pursue it to get there, you find that you've got all the money in the world and you're just not happy because there's never enough money to scratch that itch, right?
True. Trust me. Yeah. They're the most depressed people are the wealthy people.
Right.
So I understand. I don't what you're saying totally.
Kardashians don't strike me as the happiest people on the planet.
No. No, they're not. Yes, they're not. That's very true. Yeah. So, yeah, this, what you're doing is good work because you're saving people from, they say that you're climbing the ladder, but it's on the wrong building. That's a good analogy. They've done all these different things to get to the top. And when they get to the top, they recognize that, they have no, they're empty. There's no passion. There's no joy or whatever, because they've done it the wrong way or their ladder leaning against the wrong building. So that's amazing. All right. So now tell us about your book. It's called The Personal Triangle, the skills you need to live by to live life well. So why did you write it? And really, what do you want parents and students to walk away with after reading?
So I wrote it for the reasons we just talked about here, which is that I was so frustrated with people feeling they had to be struck by passion lightning, or they had to know everything, have it figured out by the time they graduated from high school, and that it was really stressing them out. I just thought it was really taking this incredible toll on families and parents that they had to have all this pressure to figure things out. And then I was looking at life and going, that's not actually the way it works for the vast majority of people out there. And so then there's all these kids who really wanted to use their gifts that God had given them and use that well and steward that well. But they wanted, they needed this like vast inventory of all their gifts. And I thought that there need to be some simplification. There are things that are complicated, and as you lean into each of these things, there's more complication, and that's good. There's depth to that. But I wanted something that was fast and easy to read, that was entertaining and interesting, and people could go, oh, that gives me a place. And I want to be really modest here. Don't think this is the only way to do things, or this is the only way to understand it. I tell people this is a perspective. It's a way. There's an author named Andy Andrews, and he talks about principles, things that are true no matter what. And he said, it's not about, I'm not going to invent any new principles. My job is to help you see things that are true no matter what from a different perspective. And you go, oh yeah, that makes sense now. And so this book is a way to sort of get a perspective on something that's true no matter what, and be able to look at it a little bit differently. And then hopefully for students to go, oh, okay, now I can kind of be less stressed. I can lean into this. I've got a bit of a roadmap. I can focus on being extraordinary at the ordinary things in front of me right now. And then I can relax and know that that'll take me to some exciting places. And, who knows? You might go from where you are now to who knows where God's going to take you. But I also had this thing where students were thinking like, I only am going to arrive when I become rich, famous, or powerful. And I want to say, no, I'm not really rich, famous, or powerful, yet I've really enjoyed the ride. I've lived a really fantastic, exciting life, and it's had tragedy, and it's had hardships and things like that, but it's paled in comparison to everything else. And so, when I just celebrated my 25th wedding anniversary yesterday. And when my wife and I got married, we did not think that we were going to have 8 kids, right? that was not planned. And
yeah,
here we are.
That one.
Yeah, that's right. And she might have run screaming if she had known that, right? And here we are. 6 children, 2 foster children, 1 headed for adoption. Who knows what happens to the other one? And it's just been a wild, exciting, crazy journey. But I spent years miserable, worried about what was coming next because I thought I had to have it all figured out. This is the book was written to kind of deal with that.
That's beautiful. And that's basically what I said earlier, that, I believe that once the mind is expanded through knowledge, you can't go back, right? And your work is allowing people to understand a different perspective, and especially the big one was when you're talking about going to college for 4 years and then you're coming out with something that's obsolete, right? And the fact that find a project and learn as you go along so that your skills would you would have the right skills. And yes. And also the other thing I got out of it is what you just said, just a couple seconds ago, about how you pick your career, and you pick it based on one of the three things, whether you like to coordinate, whether you're a connector, or whether you're, what was the other one? Organize,
create, yeah,
like that. But creating, right. So yes, because there's some creative people that can just create, and then there are the people that have the personalities, and then the organizing, which is very important, and that's beautiful because these are the personalities that you're born with, and you just pick a career that's based on that. And skills, they say that you talked with mastery when we first came on, and they're saying it's 10,000 hours to master something. So yeah, you can learn skills, right? So this is good information. And, your book is amazing. And you reach people at the time when they could make a difference. You don't want to reach them when they're 60. You don't want to be like me and starting a career in the, actually, I said 40s, 50s. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, you don't want to have to do that, right? You want to be in the right path earlier. So yes, I enjoyed our conversation, Jonathan. So tell our listeners how they can connect with you. What's your website? I know that they can pick up a copy of your book on Amazon. And what are your social media handles?
Right. So Be Unbound, unbound.us is our website. You can go there to learn about all the stuff we talked about. We have an academic program built around this. And unlike a college, we guarantee that if you do 3 years with us, just 3 years, we guarantee you'll be employed full-time, whether you have a college degree or not. We can help you earn that degree at a level that pays more than college graduates in your area, or we'll refund all 3 years of your tuition. And so we really say, like, hey, we're going to put our risk with this too. And we say we can do this. We have 10,000 alumni. So you enter a huge network of people. And so go to beunbound.us to find that. You can find the book there. And then, of course, first listen to this podcast. And then if you have time after that, we have our own podcast, Be Unbound, or you can search Be Unbound or YouTube on Instagram, and you can find us in all those places. So Be Unbound. And we'd be delighted to help you in any way we can. Would love to enroll students in our programs. But if you want to read the book, or if you just want to call us and you have questions, we spend a lot of time just talking to people, regardless of whether they ever have anything to do with our programs, because to your earlier guest, that's the generosity part. And honestly, that's where most of the blessings come, is just being able to say, hey, we've learned this, let us share it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yes. And I wanted to say that's why you're happy, because you're serving. And serving is
that's absolutely true.
That gives you the most fulfillment. So yeah, thank you for the work you do. All right, guys. Well, I will have a transcript of my conversation with Jonathan on the show page, which is myhelps.us. And I will link out to his book. I will link out to his podcast. I'll link out to his website. And you said you have a YouTube channel. I'll also link out to that. So, and his social media. So that, yeah, you will have all kind of places to connect with Jonathan. If you're a parent, if you're a young adult that are, that's starting out, or even if you are, you're grown and thinking that you might want to change your career because you are not fulfilled. And I'll tell you, as a coach, I know that there's a lot of people that have achieved the success in the quotation with the money and all the bells and whistles, and they're not happy. So yeah, and then they change careers later on in life to bring them that fulfillment and happiness. So yeah, and at any level, you can take advantage from this information that Jonathan is, generously sharing. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Jonathan, for being on the show.
Thank you.
As we wrap up, any last words?
No, thank you so much. You've been generous in allowing me to speak to your audience, and I hope it was a blessing to you and to them. And thanks very much for your time, Ern. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Well, thank you. And good luck on your book and the message and your word and what you're doing for the kingdom and for, the young people. So thank you, guys. If you guys are watching this on iTunes, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave a review. It helps us to reach a larger audience. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd love to hear your comments about, we had a good one, Jonathan talked with passion. Maybe you want to comment on that or a career that you've chosen that you're not fulfilled in. Yeah, I would love to hear your comments. And of course, hit that subscribe button as well. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.